here. Declarations of interest? No. Presentations have not been received. So we've got the minutes, which is on our front pack from 5 to 8 page. Any queries on it? Are we happy, those that have read it that is, to approve those? All say hand up yes.
I think there's only 2 or 3 wrong.
All
You
right.
can vote.
I wasn't here
But
then.
you can vote to approve the minutes.
If you read it and you're happy with it,
It's up to you guys.
We've got 2
I'm
people
not
anyway,
familiar
so
enough with it.
Okay.
we'll take
That's
that as
fine.
is okay. Yeah. So item 7 is clerk's report, which will be verbal update. Thank you.
This is 6.
Oh, sorry about that. Yes, I did want to do it fast, didn't I? Right, number 6, yeah. I don't know how that happened, but I've just been finished writing the article for next week's paper, and I'm on version 3, but the COP26 keeps changing, so I keep doing that.
Oh yeah, and the new statement came out today as well.
Yeah, and a few more, no doubt.
Yes.
So, right, yeah, thank you very much for coming. I guess it's a bit of a questions and answers, really, isn't it? Do you want to kick off with what you want to say, or does anybody want to?
Well, Chairman, perhaps it's just better to hand over and...
Yeah. Exactly. So we hand over to you.
To register yourselves, I'm John Johnson from South West Water. I'm on the estates side, so I arrange access onto private land to carry out work, including service of notice and any compensation issues arising.
Hi, I'm Adam. I work for Galliford Tribe. We're a contractor to South West Water, and we will be the company undertaking the works in the car park in terms of the new small storm tank. So I'm the construction manager. I'll be the project manager, what people call it, in terms of running the project itself. And yeah, we'll go through what we're planning to do and how we're going to do it, or answer any questions you guys might have, or concerns or anything like that.
First question is, I missed your name.
Adam Kent. Yeah.
Adam
Kent.
K-T.
Yeah, it's in the county. Yeah.
Thank you.
My name is Rachel Hawkins. I'm the Customer Liaison Officer for R&M Utilities, and we're one of the main contractors to South West Water. But I'm also going to be the Customer Liaison Officer for Galliford Tribe, because I've had a good presence down here. I work very closely with my colleague John in the estates team. So my number and contact details are always open for any residential issues or anything to do that.
Who's got that one? Is that part? You got that?
Yeah, you will have it. I think everyone
Just
around
make
here
sure.
has it.
Hi, I'm Tom. I'm the project manager for R&M. So we've been delivering the stormwater separation system. So we've come up through Teambridge, Dawlish, and then we're going up through School Hill, Longland and Penfield. So we're sort of delivering the actual stormwater separation scheme.
Do you mean that you've gone up, you mean with pipes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Right.
stormwater
I
system.
think you're driving around for a minute.
No, I wish.
Right.
We're doing a bit of that as well with a few construction vehicles, but not too
Right.
much.
Thank you. So carry on.
Okay.
Obviously, as part of the work, we're trying to reduce the stormwater overflows from various combined sewer overflow points, one of which is Brook Street, and one of the ways of doing that is to separate the surface water out of the combined system, so there's more space for foul flows, and therefore, because of the increased uptake in the volume of surface water out, that will give more space and hopefully allow lead to the CSOs not spilling as much. This particular scheme is being driven by maintaining bathing waters in the area. So as well as the surface water separation that we're carrying out, which we're aiming to complete by around about the end of March, we also want to install a storm tank, which is basically a storage tank, so that if the system gets overwhelmed to a certain extent, it will weir over into the storm tank and store there, and hopefully when system has a bit more space, it's pumped out and goes for normal treatment in the usual way. Adam will probably cover the actual tank in more details, but it's 30 cubic metres of storage, which is 30,000 litres of storm storage under the the car park. So that's basically what we're planning to do and complete that again hopefully by the end of March. So,
Thanks, John.
Would that be about 7,000 gallons in old money?
Ooh.
I see.
Now you're going to do the...
See how good at maths you are.
5 isn't it?
I don't do gallons.
Sounds about
Okay.
right.
Yeah.
So
we
the
work it out.
measurements of the storm tank are...
So yeah, so just carrying on from what John was saying really, so again it's the storm separation project, I'm assuming is,
Yeah, so surface water separation.
Yeah.
So the overall thing, obviously, as you well versed in, is to separate the water, surface water, going into the storm tank that's going to be in the car park of my house. I'm like, my directions are rubbish. That way.
Maybe not too
Yeah.
near the foundations of old building doesn't tip over.
Absolutely not.
Well, one of the things we will be doing is quite apart from undertaking temporary groundworks to make sure that we do it sensibly and nothing's going to collapse, we will be undertaking or asking independent surveyors, cross surveyors, to do a scheduled condition on the relevant parts of the building that they think might be at risk, which will probably be that element nearest, so that we have a record of condition, which basically means they go around, look for any cracks, measure them or define them, take photographs, and you'll be presented with a record, and so if after the work we can go around if necessary and say, oh, that crack is bigger than it was, or no, it's no change.
Yeah. Do we have a gap for that, say, even a year later? Because obviously ground movement and substance sometimes takes, once you've backfilled, some time to move, so that you could look a week afterwards and it would be fine, but a year afterwards a crack could appear. Is there a leeway legally for that side of it?
Legally there probably is, but I must confess I don't know what it is.
I think
Right.
there is.
but generally how it works is on handover, so we would occupy your car park, we would carry out our works, and we would finish our works presumably on the 31st of March. At that point then we would hand back to you guys, and there's a condition survey again at that point. Then you enter into the defects and liability period, which is 12 months, and after that 12 months you do exactly the same again.
So we have got a bit of leeway there. That's good.
So I'd have to check the T's and C's in the contract, but quite often every other project I've done with South West Water over the last sort of 5 or 6 years has been 12-month defect period. So yeah.
I mean certainly on the pipe work and the underground bits and pieces, but that I think more of a contract.
Is that with us to you?
Yes, I believe so, rather than a liability period for you, but I'm sure there is one.
Certainly.
But I mean, one of the things, we've had an instance recently where we dug an 8-metre deep shaft, probably 4 metres from a property. Again, we had schedules of condition done, and the staircase moved. Now, we got the surveyors in. There was no, if the work was going on out there was no damage here, and the staircase was over there, which we couldn't understand. But when the surveyors inspected, they found that the staircase hadn't been properly constructed and wasn't screwed actually or supported into the wall. So that was a defect in construction. But because the work occurred whilst we were, or after we'd done the work, we took the decision that we would make an ex gratia payment and pay for the work, and it was only a small amount.
Right.
So there
Because
wasn't-
bear in mind, of course, here, being a listed building is a bit
Yes.
different.
Yeah.
Of course, there wasn't building regulations when this was built. Building regulation was Manor's Squire's house. He was the regulator,
Yeah.
so it would
I
be
know.
built differently.
I looked into it, wasn't it the the Daily Mail actually lived
Yes,
here.
it was a newspaper magnet, it
Yeah.
wasn't a squire.
Yeah, I mean,
But it sounded posh, but
please go.
Just to be sure, we're talking about a storm storage tank, but this is for the mixed, so
Yeah.
foul waste as well.
Yeah, so the network in the area is-
So
is-
mixed system.
is combined, so that means the surface water and the foul are all within one pipe, and it's coming off of that the overflow would be stored, so it would be a combined storm tank.
My understanding from a meeting the other week is that it will then be taken back through the separation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It discharges
But it doesn't
back,
just
back,
stay
back
there
into
and
the,
go on, it goes...
It just gets stored
It's stored.
in within the tank, and following the downpour, the storm event, and the levels return to their normal
Yes.
dry weather flow,
Okay.
it will then get
Yes.
pumped, returned back into the manhole that it was taken
As
from.
I thought, yeah.
So-
But not, sorry, just to clarify, not into the newly installed separation system.
no,
No, it goes
No,
back
no,
into
it
the
goes
system.
back.
It just goes back into the
Yeah,
system.
just
Yeah.
a holding tank.
I don't know whether that plan's been shared.
Yeah, it was on
See that one?
your
Right.
website. I didn't bring a print out if anybody wanted to see it. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm quite sure the tree would be in relation to that. Would you know that?
Which tree?
A big tree in the front garden.
Well, this is the back half.
Oh, that's the back car park.
Oh,
Sorry.
yeah.
Oh, that's all right then.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have
Very
That's a big manhole, right?
Absolutely. So this is Brook Street down here.
Yeah.
There's
Do you want to use the bigger one, John?
What is known as the ballroom, or down
Yeah,
in the
so
council
that's-
chamber.
yeah, so that's the ballroom. We're over here somewhere.
Yeah.
So that's the main sewer going down Brook Street. We then connect into that manhole, which will weir over, I think, into the storm tank there, and then when the system has got capacity, it goes back out into there.
Okay.
So you-
Or rather, sorry, that's actually a safety overflow, and it's actually pumped back into the same manhole.
Yeah, so there's like a wet well right in the bottom of the tank where there's a pump.
Yeah.
And all that happens is when the event is finished and the flow returns to dry weather flow, it just empties the tank back into that manhole. That one is just a safeguard, an overflow like you would have on your cistern toilet at home, just stop it flooding. So if that level when the tank gets to the top, it then would weir back into the manhole at that point, and just as a belt and braces thing.
But just back into the system, not into the brook.
Correct.
Back into the combined storm sewer.
Yeah. Has the tank with the combined bit in it, is that going to have a sticking up vent pipe at all?
No.
So how's-
It'd be naturally vented through the existing works, like
Pipe work.
it's to dumb it down a bit. It's just a big manhole. You know, at the end of the day, it's just an underground chamber, very similar constructed to a manhole. Rather than it being sort of 2 metres in diameter, it's 4 metres in diameter. And instead, I don't know, locally around here, I imagine the manholes are what, 2 or 3 metres deep. So it's 4 metres deep. So it's
What sort of load is it built to take?
Highway.
Bearing in mind that this is a parking area which sometimes
Of
might have
surface.
lorries or
yeah, it would
delivery
be designed
vans.
to highway spec. So it would be the same as a standard
Okay.
road. Yeah. So
So you can run lorries over the top.
yeah.
of it.
So 10-ton axle load, 12-ton axle load.
I'm assuming that, I'm just asking to hear it, that's all.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's exactly.
Are they plastic or metal, those tanks?
The tank will be constructed in concrete. So it will be made in concrete rings, which are segmental.
Like the ones that we saw
Right.
similar to down
Yeah. They sort of come as a circle. Our ones, because it's 4 metres in diameter, won't go on the back of a lorry. It will come in segments, and we'll bolt those segments together out there, and then lift them on E-rings.
there. If there's a connection to Brook Street, where will that be made to and from and past?
So right, so so again, we just come straight from Brook
I
Street,
think I've
and
seen it one time, but I
Yeah.
can't remember.
right. So what we've got, you've got the corner of the what I think you've just described as the ballroom,
Yes, I do remember that.
and there's the garage.
Yeah.
So this straight line here, that's the new manhole that we're going to be putting in Brook Street, in the wide bit at the top, if you like.
Where it enters up onto Old Town Street up here.
Old Town Street is probably about here.
Yeah, more bricks.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, yeah.
And then we come straight across into the tank. And
With one pipe coming in, which will be 300?
I think it's 225.
Or
So
225.
you're going through our nice old wall.
We're going
Underneath it.
under the wall.
You'll be building that wall today, let me tell you.
We are very conscious of it.
I think it's just a pile of old stones from the ex-St Mark's Church from many years ago.
quite a few photos of that.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah,
exactly
that-
built, that wall.
No problem. We will certainly look after.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's
Reinstatement
nothing.
is very much on the plan, so I'm sure it'll be back to
There's another line going here.
Yes,
So that's purely the overflow.
that's the overflow.
So
That's going to involve a trench, or does it exist already?
No,
that will be a new trench.
Okay.
And these two are also new manholes as well. So the two circles, the one at the end of that line is a new. Whenever you change direction or gradient in the sewer, you need one of these inspection chambers or a manhole.
Is this yellow area where the Riverside building is? Or not?
that denotes the public the extent of the public highway.
Okay.
The red line is what is within your title registered with the land registry.
That doesn't include the Riverside though, because we leased that, it's not.
This is nowhere near the Riverside.
No, I'm just checking where these things go, where these drains go. Okay.
So yeah, that's just the footpath. I keep thinking we're in that corner.
I know.
I keep thinking that the car park's just here.
So when it comes off the big storm tank, off
I'd be more than
diagonal
happy
to the right, the manhole I think is in the footpath, and then it goes out into the street.
So, yeah, so at some point this is just the overflow pipe right at the top of the tank, just to stop it flooding, and then we just put, if that was to happen, obviously it would just drain down and naturally gravitate back
And
into
you've got
the
some kind of controlled equipment or whatever.
Yes.
It's going to be sited near the garage.
Yes.
Yeah, so in that little corner there, so that little box on the side there, that would be the control kit.
Here, yeah.
That's it, yeah. So I think, was that the place that everybody was happy that
Yes.
we put that again, that's, like you see on the side of many roads, it'll be a kiosk, I don't know, sort of, maybe a metre high, just a small cabinet really, and all that's in that is, it would be, to operate the pump that's in the bottom of the tank, it will need a level control, it will need a power supply, and it will need an off-site alarm, so a BT, a phone line. So when it operates, it will ping a signal to South West Water to say,
It's got a problem.
or it's on or off. Yeah, that's what it will say. So when it gets switched on, South West Water,
It's
yeah.
an automatic.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
on
it is.
the wall, the house wall.
So,
That's the back corner.
Is that our house?
Oh,
no, that would be a new power supply brought in by us, which
Through
is
Western Power.
from Western Power, paid by South West Water.
So that would come from the road or from this building or what?
It will come from the road.
from the road.
It comes from.
Is it an underground cable? I
It
don't
will
know.
be, yeah.
Yeah.
So
It's underground, so no
so
intrusive activity.
if you walk up Brook Street and at the T junction, there's a pole with all the overheads on. We bring a feed down the pole, come across or WPD do that bit,
Yeah.
Western Power Distributions, and then they would hand it over to us at
So that will either be down that part of Brook Street or the pavement, under the wall and into us.
yes.
Another bit of wall. We're getting a new wall with that.
How badly do you want it?
I am joking, Andy. I am
They're going
joking.
under the wall, so I think the wall is intending to stay.
The wall won't
Yeah, I
be
know it
touched.
won't
Yeah,
stay.
looking at the wall, I don't think anything's going to happen to that wall.
John is
Yeah.
our senior quantity surveyor. I'm sure you can advise on all the state of the
Scripture.
I'd like to see the panic on our clerk's face when they say something mischievous.
John, is that all going to be fine,
The
isn't
wall
it?
is fine. The wall is fine. We'll undertake a number of surveys on the wall. If the wall was an 18th century super duper
Yeah.
monument, historic thing, again we would monitor the wall. If there were concerns, we'd underpin the wall. We'd put pins, one every 4, sort of 1 every 4 every metre, and then we do 1 every.
We will trust you entirely.
It will be fine. We're not going to. Yeah. So.
But if something does happen, we will put it right, or pay compensation.
Exactly. Yeah.
One question for you about the cable. I don't know if it's going under an earth bed, I'm sure. You've got a key with it, because there's a lot of digging going on here. Will you have a little plaque on the wall saying electric cable X number of feet down or anything? So for history reasons we know where it goes?
All the WPD stuff is surveyed and put on the as-built survey for the buried services utilities companies, as all utility companies.
I was thinking more of us, like if it went under a dirt bed and it was only a bit that far down or something.
It won't be that far, you won't.
Unfortunately, you're not allowed to do that anymore. So in terms of electric cables, they all have to be a metre deep. So you know, in terms of that sort
How
of
far down?
It's
2 metres.
the cables. Is it 1.2 foot?
It's
Right.
normally CBS.
Yeah, and so it'll be taped.
So we shouldn't be digging that far, unless you're digging a tree out.
No, yeah. So yeah, 1.2 to the top of the cable, and then
Right.
600 above that, you'd have like warning tape to say if you're digging down electric cable beneath, and then again, it's all.
Can I ask the clerk, Andrew,
No.
have we got a really, because of all that's been going on, a while ago when we were going to take some trees down, we were going to redo that bank, we found that we didn't know where all of the things were, and in fact some of the things weren't there at all. So how up to date is our mapping now of the various utilities and drains going through?
Only what's available via general consent through our mapping service and GIS. You'd have to go to the specific
So
utility company to get exact.
I'm just thinking that you will have got some up-to-date stuff before you started digging anywhere.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it wouldn't be a bad idea if we asked if we could have
Well,
sight of
what
that.
we do, just as a belt and braces again, we go to all the utility companies and say,
Mm.
we're going to be working in this area, please can you give us the updated drawing? What we actually do as well then, we employ a company,
Superimpose your...
well we would go and do a physical survey, so we do a buried services search. So there's companies that do ground probing radar, they lift all the lids, and then they'll where they do a thing called cat and jenny the pipes. So they'll actually measure physically what's out there and compare that to what we think's there. Once we've got that, we'll then, before we start digging, we then actually physically scan the ground ourselves. So they're the 3 things that we do before we start doing anything, you know, before we put a shovel in the ground, really, that's where we go.
Didn't stop a problem up the road here, did it?
There's
We're
always
going to that.
anomalies. Yeah, it's not
but
an exact
if you've got
science.
something
Yeah.
nice and up to date, is there any
No,
reason
I
why
can-
we
I can
couldn't
pass
have
on.
something
Yeah,
to
yeah,
add to our
absolutely.
records, Andrew?
If that's of any use
The
to
only
you.
thing
If it's
that-
permissible.
If it's, yes, if you can do that.
It's all within the public domain, so
Yeah.
it's not nothing you won't be able to find on the internet.
After we finished, what we produce is an as-built plan, and I'm sure on that we will probably mark any
Absolutely.
services that we find,
That would be good to have.
so that there's a record. Where they go, we can't say if they're outside our working area, but we will mark them where they are within.
And could that include what you've already had to go through with the previous one?
Probably, yeah. If we've got a record of the
All
services.
our as-built will be sent across because they're picking it all up.
So,
The only thing I will say is the dial before you dig drawings, they don't cover private supplies. So like the gas will take it, show you where the gas comes up to where your meter is, but after where your meter is, it doesn't normally illustrate where it goes. So it will show you where the main apparatus is for the utility company. But once it goes from that private point, it doesn't necessarily pick it up.
if we
Also-
could compare it with what we've got, it wouldn't be wasted, would it?
Also, from a customer liaison point of view, I think it would be helpful for you guys to have something that's easy to see. You know, it's like those CAD drawings that we get sometimes that we send you are not always visible to the layman effectively.
My son
But obviously we have, you know, all drawings that we can send. But yeah, we could probably do something that's a lot easier for you to
Anything
be
that helps
visible
us to
for this.
update our stuff.
Of course,
it
yeah,
would be helpful.
absolutely.
As a matter of interest, Tom, did you find very much in the trenches when you were?
A couple bits, but they're all until you get the proper stuff come across if you want.
Yeah, no problem.
Well, they said it would be efficient if we had something even up on the wall. I don't know.
Yeah,
Everything
whatever's the
goes on
best way for
computers
you
these
guys.
days. I shouldn't say
see
it on the
it.
wall, but
You
it
tell
would be
us,
quite
won't
handy, you know. Yeah.
I mean, it's probably worth pointing out that WPD, you know, we will request the power supply, and what WPD decide in terms of, you know, the route, etc., to a certain extent is up to them, and they will undoubtedly request a way leave for the power supply, and we'll obviously have to pay for any easement payment
Yeah.
granting that.
Talking of waylays, do we as a building here and a trust, etc., do we get any money, wayleave money for having your equipment on our site, or is that something that's never been asked?
No, it's frequently asked
Oh.
because obviously we're aware that WPD and BT generally pay, you know, an annual payment, or
I
often
used to
do.
get it when I had a country place, had electric going through.
Yeah,
my-
exactly.
Yeah, we used to have a toll in the
But
middle.
the water industry is different in terms of it's a one-off payment after we've installed the equipment. You know,
So
based
we
on
will get that
compensation.
anyway.
Yes, I mean
That's
it's
in the room.
up to us to agree what that sum will
We
be.
haven't sorted that yet.
No,
No.
correct. Either for this proposed work or for what we've done so far.
Yeah, of course, that's in addition to all making good the car park and all the other bits and pieces and
Yeah.
so on, yeah.
Yeah.
One little final question, this, maybe I've got to think after me. Is it been sort of, not surprising, but harder in a way, doing this type of improvement in an area which is mostly old Victorian houses, which probably most of them have combined drains anyway, so you can't really improve on the separation there easily. It's mostly like road water and stuff that you're going to do the job. So does that sort of frustrate you, or what you're doing here will sort of at least mitigate against that?
I don't think it's a frustration at all. No, it's just something. I mean, as you
It's
said,
often
it's
trickier.
Victorian.
It's tricky.
In these areas,
It's something to
it's
improve.
often technically
You're
challenging.
in the heart of the old town here, you see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's something that is absolutely required,
And
especially
an improvement in the
in
grand
this day and
scheme.
age, as we see on the telly, and God knows what's going on with it. You know, and all of those sorts of things. It needs to be done. It needs to be done throughout
Yeah.
the entire country. You know, it's one of those things. You've got to keep your clean water clean and your dirty water dirty.
And I think,
so-
you know, we're all from the southwest, we all want the bathing waters to be much
Exactly.
more improved, and Southwest Water is putting a hell of a lot of money into this, and yeah, it's been
As
an
long as they
intrusive
don't,
project, but
as long as they don't discharge so much from Timaru, we'll be very pleased.
Yeah.
no, absolutely.
Especially in the holiday season. I live in a very, very old house, and when
Okay.
you took it on,
Mhm.
it was obvious that the water, well, sewage, anything, used to go into what was the leak running then. And I suspect down along Brook
Really?
Street, all of those houses would have just discharged straight
Oh,
into the
definitely,
brook,
Yeah, yeah,
all the
yeah.
way down.
Yeah,
And
from
many
what I've
years-
learned,
Many years ago I saw a very old plan which showed a sewer right from the bottom of Queen Street, right across the lawn, diagonally and into the brook.
Yeah.
I'm sure that doesn't work now, but
Oh,
obviously you took the easy way out, didn't you?
I found them.
And it's just different times.
We're
isn't
trying to
it?
improve it
And-
now.
It was, yes.
and
Yeah,
the
different times.
population density was a lot less, and
Oh,
and,
yes.
and it
Water
wouldn't
consumption
have
was a lot
the
less.
impact it has today.
Yeah,
so-
water consumption as well, yeah. Consumption of clean water is massive as well, and it's, yeah, but
Interesting times.
Yeah.
it
And
is,
certainly
yeah. But
In
it's,
terms of surface water separation, obviously we have to bear in mind the cost of doing things and getting the maximum for water ratepayers, you know, money. And obviously we do stuff in the streets. We do sometimes do work in private land where it is appropriate. For instance, if there's a private car park, we would say, right, that's a big area of surface water that we can take out. We'll include that. But once you start working around people's homes, it gets very expensive because, you know, often you've got to go around the back of the property to pick up the surface water from the rainwater goods at the back, and you've got all the reinstatement of paths, gardens, plants, etc. We do it sometimes where it's appropriate. We've done it in Exmouth, and we've actually included a what do they call it, intelligent water butts, so that we install water butts so that the rainwater goes into the water butts and they can discharge into our sewer, but we've got controls on the water butts so that people can use the water from the water butts when it's appropriate. But when we see that there's a storm forecast, we can drain the water butts under control, so that when the rain, so they're empty when the storm arrives, and that gives capacity.
Attenuation to the so additional attenuation. It's obviously it's expensive to treat the the foul water. So again, it makes so much logical sense to reduce the carbon footprint of all of
It's
that
like a preemptive
by keeping your
action.
water clean, keeping the surface water clean, and out of the foul water.
But until all new housing is compulsorily connected to grey water systems, you've still got a problem.
Yeah.
Well,
There's a bigger situation there, Val.
all new properties have to have separate foul and surface water, but obviously that then relies on there being separate systems for them to connect into, which isn't always the case.
How much say do water companies have with planning applications when you're talking about drives and parking areas as to whether they're permeable surfaces or not?
It's a very big question.
That's
Yeah.
like that, that's
I
not
don't
bad.
know
sure we can
Not
answer
enough.
that right now. And
Is it?
I'm
Not
not
enough.
sure.
something.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's
Yeah,
right on the
That's
agenda.
planning and building regs as opposed to our
It all
zoning.
needs updating, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, don't apologise, Val. It's a very valid point, but just not what's on our agenda.
Our clerk's got a question for you.
I've got 4 actually.
Fire away.
How much of the rear car park is anticipated to be lost while the works are taking place? Will it be closed off at the sort of cut through, if you like, into it, or will there still be some spaces available for parking? That's the first question. I'll ask them all.
Go on, yeah.
They'll lob at its hand.
That was on my list. Yeah.
Okay.
Where's all the equipment going to be stored?
Yeah.
Where's any material that's removed going to be deposited? And where will workmen park their vehicles when they attend the site?
Okay, right, so I'll start with our footprint. As you can appreciate, the more room we have, the easier the work is. So, but again, we do appreciate that you guys are going to be in here. So, in my head, obviously, this is just what I thought at the moment, is that sort of back corner of the car park, we would probably need that entire area. I was thinking that the footpath that comes up the side and then joins Brook Street, we would
I think
certainly,
logically speaking, Adam,
we could,
the whole car park's going to be
that whole corner, well, we
the
wouldn't
whole
have-
back car park.
the whole back car park, yeah.
Yeah.
So
that
it
whole-
will be closed at the edge of the turning circle. From there back, it's
Yeah.
going to be completely closed.
As we have, yeah.
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 So when Tom did the same, so yeah,
It'll be the same.
yeah.
From the start, or will that be
Yeah.
It would,
segmental?
yeah,
or-
it probably wouldn't. It depends on the logistics and the program in terms of when I'm getting deliveries.
Mm.
So if I've got the rings coming in and I've got the lids coming in and the equipment and all of that, we'll only take up the room we need, obviously. But for just a
For safety purposes and logistical reasons,
it will
though,
be that corner.
it's going to be, yeah.
And the footpath going into the back of it for safety reasons again, I guess.
I was going to say that will be fenced off, so you've still
Yeah.
got access for the fire exits and
Right.
Yes,
what have you.
exactly.
Okay.
In terms
So
of-
will there be room then, if you're taking the entire rear car park, will there be room for your workmen's vehicles to park in
Within
there
that,
and
yeah.
not in the turning circle?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'll tell them. We'll probably have 3 or 4 lads and a supervisor. So 2 of them will probably drive together in a van. So we will probably have 2 or 3 vans.
So
if
sort
you
of
like.
small
But then you're gonna
transit
have-
sized in the car
But
park.
then you're going to have heavy vehicles as well doing excavating and removing
Yeah,
material.
only on certain occasions, it won't be all the time, and we will obviously give you forewarning when that needs to happen. But with regards to the car park, I think we can just assume that that is going to be off.
I mean, the excavator will be stationed here, it won't be going away until
Yeah.
we finish.
Because I'm thinking a sis can probably come in and out through the front, and Roger can, but sometimes the outside services will need to get access to the garage.
That's a good point.
Oh, anything like that, just come and talk to
Let
us.
us
We're
know,
more
and
than
we
happy to accommodate anything like that, yeah. So if I can't imagine, I don't think off the top of my head we're going to be excavating that side. The only thing that would stop us would be deliveries. Obviously, we've been talking with Tom's team and how they do their sort of their muckaway. We're actually going to be quite collaborative in terms of, I don't want to start bringing more gear in, more wagons, more excavating equipment. So we're going to do a deal with R&M in terms of the muckaway. We're going to use their compound. We're going to use their muckaway services, just so we don't add to the more wagons and carbon
So
footprint of all the gear coming in and out. So
Exactly the same, super quick, as we've done all the time through the whole brick sheet.
I'm not going to
project.
reinvent. Tom seems to have set it up amazingly here. He's got a compound at the top,
Yeah.
up at the top of the hill, and we're going to be tipping into his compound. And
Rather
then,
than kill again.
so
Yeah,
there we go. So
Emerson's Hill.
They won't,
Emerson's
they
Hill,
won't
but
be,
it's bad.
they won't be accessing it via Bad Lake because of where it's narrow. They're
Right.
leaving it at Emerson's Hill. We've got a diversion in place to avoid access generating some complaints.
Yeah, but I was going to say watch out at how long your timing is, because there's already road closures because of lower Dawlish water and whatever.
Yeah,
So there's
Yeah,
a
we've got a
different movement of
we've got a
traffic.
diversion in
Slightly
place
different,
just
but
for
it's
the
super
dumpers
quick.
and construction traffic.
What sort of time period are you thinking of, start to finish?
my optimistic programme is 12 weeks
From till?
from the 4th of January until the 31st of March is when we'll be here.
So we've got to watch out in case we've got any big events or anything taking place like weddings and so forth.
Or
Because of
Burns
getting catering in.
Or
Burns
Because of
night,
getting catering in through the back of the...
steady
if
on.
anyone's got it.
So we're going to need to go through all that with Andrew.
But in
Well, we'll
terms
go
of
with Manor through the bookings, but as we did with Tom, we
If you talk to us, anything like that,
Same.
we'll accommodate anything like that. You know, just as long as we're talking and we know what's coming up, we'll make sure that
Yeah,
if
just
you
let
guys
me
need
know,
access.
and obviously Alan's,
Yeah.
you know, my manager, so anything that you need, I will filter it back to
We
Alan.
can certainly help out wherever.
I mean, I'm assuming that once the pipe is in from Brook Street through the access,
Yeah,
then that pedestrian access will be opened up again.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So you
Yeah,
will have access into the back.
And
of
we
the
probably
building
wouldn't
from Brook
close
Street.
it until we start works either. You know, if we're not working there, we certainly wouldn't close just because we've got the road closure in. If it doesn't need to be closed, we certainly wouldn't close it. So. But
Just one other question.
sorry, have I answered them? So we did car park.
Yeah.
We did
Where the
footprint.
goods will be stored.
All the kit will be stored within the compound overnight. So the
But not
excavator.
in front of the
the
garage,
Pardon?
but not in front of the garage.
Again, we would have to grant you access into our working area. So again, I wouldn't suggest that when
Yeah.
we're not there, people come in just because it.
No, no, no.
Can the council clarify what access you actually need to that garage?
I mean, what's in there?
Yeah,
All of our outside services, equipment, heavy plant machinery,
Okay.
mowers, trimmers, and we've got literally nowhere else to store it.
Right. Well,
Okay.
I'm assuming that if we're working between January and March,
Less of a need.
trimmers and mowers won't be in frequent use. So I would have thought that provided we have
Just come and
a
talk
bit
to
of
us,
warning.
and we'll certainly get any gear, get you guys in and out of there. No
I
problem.
don't think piling up earth because that can't be moved quickly.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
was all.
Yeah.
Yeah, not quickly.
Sorry, Chair, would it be in order for us to, if it did become an issue, for a container to be provided, so we could, you know, put regulars who use tools and bits and pieces like that?
Well, if that was, I don't know, if that was feasible, if it was feasible, if it was feasible, that's the first thing, but second is where would we put it?
Yeah.
That might then result in additional spaces being
Problems.
lost.
Yeah.
Um,
Did we get one when we get to it? I
So,
reckon?
Yeah,
I don't think it'll be an issue.
It's something we can look at.
If we all talk, I don't think it would
Given
be.
the proximity of the hole,
It is very
to
close
the
to the
entrance to
garage.
the garage, it could be an issue.
And we've got bins as well we're going to have to move, so because they're going to be taken in and out. And that's going to take up space somewhere else.
The trailer and the container that is in the corner is that going to stay or is
that would be saying, That's
both.
full of events equipment, and it's
Yeah.
children's and girls.
So is it events equipment mainly in the summer months? Because I remember
It's
some-
all year
sorts
round.
of times.
Okay.
All year round.
Would it not be a little bit more efficient if you guys could move it somewhere, or do you
To
not?
where?
There's a Teambridge car park close by, but we would have to make an arrangement with Teambridge to pay them for the space, or space is.
Well, we
Okay.
would
We
cut
can,
that.
yeah. We have
So
good,
there's-
you know,
there's-
Southwest Water has good connections
Take
with
some of the
council. We
strain
can,
perhaps out of the.
if it's, I'm just thinking if it's an events trailer that's meant to be, you know, mobile now and again, it would be a
So
lot
we're
better.
talking about the
if-
trailer or the container?
Oh gosh, what's the difference?
Obviously, the trailer's on wheels.
Yeah.
The one that can be towed away easily,
Yeah.
that's got
I mean,
labels on.
we would prefer if the trailer was,
That's
Would-
probably
would take-
easier than the
Yeah.
container.
Yeah,
which,
that's what I'm
depending
saying.
whether you've got somewhere
We don't.
you can take it, or we could possibly take it up to the compound.
But then we couldn't get access to it.
Or we can, I'm sure we
No,
can
but if it's an events thing that you
talk.
tow away, then
Yeah.
that would still be available. If you
Yeah.
told us, yes, we need it on Friday or whatever.
There's a question mark
No.
over security.
I'm sure we can talk to Team
Let's see what we've got on first,
Oh.
and know a better idea, that might be the
Yeah.
problem.
If you check,
Yeah.
we check
It's
with
now
the
not
things
summer
like when
season.
quite a few things and,
Yeah.
and let them know. And if we can't have a parking space, we obviously have to probably tell them and
Yeah.
see what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fine.
The trouble is, we have to make this place viable, and every time we lose
Mm.
parking,
Mm.
we potentially lose hirers. So
Yeah.
it's all a bit of touch and go.
Yeah,
Well,
no.
we've discussed with Andrew, in terms of the level of room hire, etc. And if there's a drop because we've taken up space, then we will have to compensate you for the loss of the room rent.
It's not so much that, it's the potential loss of future hires, so we just have to, there's nothing either of us can do directly, but we do
No.
have to bear it in mind.
Just
Yeah.
just the last question for me is, what's your anticipated working hours?
So it's going to be pretty dark, isn't it? So we were going to be in the winter months, yeah, so 8 till 5.
Yeah, same as we've done in Brook Street already, 8 AM till 5 PM, but yeah, given the clock's going back, probably start packing up about 4:30.
Yeah, because at 4:30 it'd be nearly dark in January.
Exactly, yeah, yeah.
Still dark.
So yeah, maximum 5 PM end of, but as we've
I mean,
said,
it's not the same, I know, but
we all work, if we have to do out of hours work or work on weekends, we will give you guys like full, with notice.
It's just that the clerk has to arrange this because of locking of the gates, because while
Right.
the work was going on,
Yeah.
we allowed people to park here.
Well, we did.
Okay,
Well, we didn't allow them, we didn't stop
Just
them
remember,
parking.
it's
Yeah.
on record now, so.
We didn't
Okay.
stop them, so, Andrew, you explain them.
Well,
We now have a
the
problem.
gates are being locked, so I just need to know.
yeah, can
what
I
the
ask
hours
that
work.
question as well? When will these
They're
gates
locked when
come?
the building's not in use.
And
I
that would
can't be
be,
any more specific than that.
right.
okay, thank
Okay.
you very much, Town Clerk.
So the only other reason we maybe work on a little bit, just in case if it was something going on with wet concrete or
And that's fine.
yeah,
Or
so
notice
maybe
the
once or
event.
twice during that 12-week
Yeah.
process, we'll put a base in,
Yeah.
and we might have to pour some concrete. Then we wouldn't be able to open the road. It might then be prudent that we do a night shift. Just maybe one. It just depends on how.
And generally, we're open in the
We
evenings
will give as
anyway,
much
so
notice.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
can,
but
again,
that'll
we
be
can
a
accommodate that, as long as we know.
Yeah,
That's fine.
Yeah,
be a
of
one.
course.
And we did ask Mr Hanson, didn't we, about heavy vehicles for this part of the project,
Yes.
coming over the beautifully restored drive.
I know,
If there
it's
is any
lovely.
further damage to that,
Yeah, we have to
you
put it
accept
right.
it, yes.
But
We'll do a full condition survey of everywhere we get there. So no problem.
That's good. I like to hear that compensation. It's sort of music to your ears, isn't it?
Our compensation is some daffodils, if you'd like to come and help plant.
Oh yeah, and her daffodils.
No, they're not mine,
Oh,
they're
they're
ours, you
yours.
can come and help plant.
Oh yeah, your daffodils, when would you like those reinstalled?
Yeah, you might take it off that, be careful.
April?
Yeah. But it sounds pretty inclusive what you're going to do, and I'm fairly confident that you're going to look after for us basically.
Yeah.
And there is any queries, we come to, is it yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah, if we've got any worries and things. Well, there are still things in the background which we won't reopen now. You know, like we usually discuss with you, like should we have a basket or a grill of some kind as it goes into the brook, in case the litter comes in, and I think we thought that wouldn't happen. So hopefully that will also be in the checks once it all gets going. Because we've got to bear in mind, it's not just an ordinary stream.
Yeah.
It's got wildlife on it. Dozens
Absolutely.
and dozens of ducks and whatever, and if they went, that'd be
Yeah, of
real
course.
outcry.
And I'm sure you're obviously South West Water works very closely with the Environment Agency,
Yeah.
so there's nothing that's
So
going
it's
to
very
be
important that they looked after them.
adverse effects to any wildlife or the black swans of Dawlish, which
Yeah.
I understand 2 more have been reinstated in the last couple of days. That is
Well, we're well up.
Yeah. Come on, I can comms.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've had 2 new black swans.
Yes, they are unusual, so that's good.
Yeah,
isn't it?
absolutely. And we will.
So, unless there's any other questions, or you've got any particularly you wanted to ask us, you probably.
I think the only thing sort of outstanding is we'll probably just discuss separately on if we can accommodate that trailer. The trailer being would really help us.
Yeah.
And
Should
I-
we,
and
can
I
we try
can't-
and lock that down then, if that's going to be an issue?
Well, we can try and find a solution. I think
Okay.
that's the best.
Yeah,
bet.
I think
We'll
we
go
can-
away and
Somewhere off,
Gary
sorry, yeah.
Caps is on Timbridge District Council who operate the car park here.
Okay. I did speak to someone about that trailer, and apologies, I've forgotten her name a while ago, but she did remind me about that it needs to
Andy Weatherhead.
Thank you, Val. Yeah, so I'm more than happy to speak to Andy and try and come up with some off-site solution for that
we'll just
trailer.
try and figure that out. The container again, that would be okay. It's just it would be good if the trailer, if we could find a home for the trailer
Yeah.
during the construction phase. So.
Yeah, we can do that.
Good.
no
So you'll
problem.
sort that out with Angie or Andrew, yeah.
I will go through
Yes,
Andrew,
with
if you
Andrew.
don't mind, just to keep it, on the level and sort that out. I'll do that, no problem.
And probably if you decide, if the decision is to do that, you've got Gary's knows about it, so.
So did I tick off? So we've done car park, we've done footprint, we did spoil. I'm sure there was a 4th and I didn't write it down.
Where was vehicles going to park?
Oh, right,
Presumably you had enough
Within the
space out there
within-
for that, so
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
what.
So we'll keep ourselves.
Covered.
Hope so.
And we'll try and use the compound for car parking, then
Yeah.
minimise the number of vehicles on site.
And obviously any sort of collaborative working me and Tom will do, obviously we talk quite a lot, obviously Tom's won you guys over by now, so well, I'll just carry on in Tom's glorious channels.
So if you need any technical information, go to Tom.
Well,
So
should you, Tom, do have a problem running into the dark, neighbours do tend to moan if you have to put your floodlights that go into their rooms. So if you do have to light anything up, make sure it doesn't shine into the neighbours. That's a good tip for you. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
No, that's helpful
It is,
information.
yeah.
Anything like that,
Yeah.
it's helpful. Thank you.
Just one small thing, if I may. You've got our plan, the footprint of the building and what we own. The actual little exit bit onto the top of Brook Street, that little bit is ours as well.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Yeah, we scoped that out.
It's a funny little bit, but yes,
Yeah.
it is. It
Where
is
the
ours.
bins are stored and it's
They're not our bins.
No, but residents have put their bins.
Where you go out and there's a railing to stop you running out, that
Okay.
bit going up onto there is ours.
Yes,
Yes.
I know.
And part of the pavement, I can't see on here. Yeah, I'm going to say, I think that the actual curb line and the pavement runs along there.
The only bit that ours is the little footpath bit that goes up onto it. If you look on our, you've got a copy of our deeds, and you can compare it.
Your red line, you think is land registry.
This is what is shown on the land registry title,
Yeah.
which includes part of the public highway, which is why I shaded it in yellow, to show
That's
which is
not on the deeds,
yours,
is it?
but which is public highway.
Okay.
That's not
Well,
on
it's
the
not,
deeds.
it would be
Well,
unusual if
we'll
land
have to
registry
check that.
maps differ slightly to some of the historic maps that are around. But
I'm sure John will be able to tell you land registry doesn't always match with
Well,
historical.
I've got the same stuff as the land registry, so.
That that is what they registered as your ownership.
We've got a bit of land just near us, which there's three properties with each claim.
You need to follow that one up, haven't you?
Well, we'll have a look. It's not a burning issue for
Unfortunately,
the
Well, I don't
there's no argument about it.
Worth making a note.
Yeah.
Right, well,
I'm
if
not
we finish,
qualified as a comment
well, we've got a few more things to tick off on our one. You're
Yeah.
welcome to stay, but I believe you want to go, which is very wise of you.
No, you have other things on your agenda. But thank you very much for letting us speak.
No worries.
Take a spare one,
Can
sure.
oh, would you like to keep this?
Well, one or other would be nice.
Also, I'll leave you my card, and then if any questions you have, and 4-5, just in case. Any questions you have in the meantime, please do not hesitate to call me.
Andrew.
Not that I know of.
Don't point at my calendar.
Yeah, I know, but I can't look into that now.
What I'm guessing is, if it turned out that was right, any part from the tax
Well,
it's something for our business.
the ramp is ours, so.
The round is, yes.
Yeah, but that's obviously not topographical, it's a top down, so it's not going to show you the slope.
Well, nobody told me.
That yellow bit is the slope.
I'll make inquiries.
It's gone out
Thanks
a
very
lot
much,
more.
Council.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
See you soon.
If
Yeah.
you've got any other questions or concerns, just
Bye, Tom.
contact one of us.
I'll send that.
Good seeing you. Thank you, bye-bye.
Bye.
See you guys later. Bye, Tom. Cheers.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Okay, right.
Okay, so now we do item 7 then.
Well, hopefully that was quite informative. Hopefully yourself especially found out what you needed and everything.
Well, Tom, with the first project, has been extremely accommodating and met with me every week to run through what was happening, what was coming up, any issues that we had, they had. So hopefully, Adam seems perfectly approachable and we'll have the same relationship. So
That's good.
Yes.
I think it would be good.
That's the most important thing, isn't it?
Still don't understand that one.
Right then, so we will now go on to item 7, which is, as it says here, class report verbal. Andrew.
Thank you, Chairman. Just two things really. The solar PV panels, we're still awaiting the to scale drawings for the disability set application, so that is in progress. And the female toilet refurbishment will be brought back to the January meeting because the third company providing the quote decided that we were too small a project for them to quote.
Sure.
So we have the two. I would like to get the third if we can. So that's anticipated to come in January, Chairman.
Right. Just on those same reports, has Councillor John Petherick come back on whether he's contacted any other central heating
Well,
companies?
just on that, I've not had a response from the contractor that did come initially to look at the boilers, but I have contacted him to ask if in that quotation the possibility of upgrading whatever boilers we do purchase could be converted to hydrogen in the future as an option. So that request is in, and hopefully we will see that in the quotation that is sent to us.
Okay. Just as a,
But no, Councillor Petherick hasn't.
Oh right, well so take those two things, the hydrogen first. If you do talk about it again, do make a note of asking for green hydrogen, not blue, because there are two types. Blue needs energy to make it and it's really not efficient at the present moment, but green comes from different systems and is more CO2 efficient, so we want a boiler converted to green hydrogen, just as a little technical note. What was the other one? Oh yeah, John said to me about a month ago that he was definitely going to get onto two companies he knew, and I didn't want to interrupt and say, should I have a look as well? So I left it to him. So could I perhaps ask you to do a bit of a sneaky thing, just to sort of send him an email just saying how you're getting on with your central heating companies to get rid of this or whatever word you want to use, is it? Just to sort of jog him along. I don't know. He says he knows these companies, but then when I've asked him twice, it doesn't seem to materialise. That's why I got that other one. So otherwise we just have to, all of us, as central heating companies, and try and get these other two quotes in. Right. So that's that bit. Yes. Point 7.
If you just take a vote to note the report.
Oh, right, okay. So are we happy with that report and agree with that one? Thank you. Noted.
Could I just ask something about the boiler and central heating system?
Go ahead.
Have we had somebody in, is this not going to be part of what we were talking about, what we agreed at full council, that we're going to bring somebody in to do an energy assessment here? And won't that affect anything, including what kind of and how many boilers and their output and all the rest of it? So are we being a little bit premature but by pushing or pressing then for absolute quotes on a system until we get that assessment?
It would certainly be included, but you're not committing yourself to any quote that you receive, so the two can come in tandem, and if they identify it, you've already got your first quote in hand. So I don't see it as an issue.
Okay.
Yeah, I suppose there's always a possibility. If you're talking about the energy survey, I guess, aren't you? It probably would include heating systems, but not every survey includes the actual types of boilers, strangely enough. So, as Andrew just, I don't think you're doing harm anyway. But you're right, it'd be great to do it in tandem. At the present moment, to be honest with you, the biggest problem we've got is getting anyone to do anything. So whatever we do get is at least we've got some more information.
That's been the case for the last 2 or 3 years, really,
Yeah.
especially with all the civic amenity projects. We've got at least a dozen in hand, I think.
Yeah. So it is any information we do receive from any contractor member is most welcome. So going on to similar things then, which is in the pages 15 to 16, we've also got the building condition survey. Just to give the quote I received, to conduct building condition survey and appoint a contractor to carry out such work, which I believe applies as the notice info, if any.
Thank you, Chairman. It's all as listed in the report. We went out to 8 or 9 contractors, and only one has returned a quote. A couple of them declined to say that they didn't undertake that type of work, but there was no response received from any of the others. So the quote that you have received back is listed in front of you, with a bit of narrative from them about what they will do, and so it is for the committee to decide whether they are happy to go with the quotation received at contractor A.
That is a sum of how much?
1,450 plus VAT and disbursements.
Right.
I haven't read through this in detail. Are they competent with a building like this? Have they had experience with listed buildings of 200 years old?
They are a very well known, obviously we haven't appointed anybody, so I'm keeping it anonymous, but they are very well known and are used by major organisations, and their quotation and documents came back as competent. They're all registered with the appropriate agencies for that type of work, so there's no reason why they shouldn't be.
What level of detail are we getting, as you say?
So they'll provide us with a written report detailing methods of construction, condition and any requirement for repairs or improvements to various elements of the buildings, and they'll also provide a schedule of repairs complete with budget costs and associated priority ratings, and it will also be supplemented with a schedule of photographs for reference purposes.
Will they need scaffolding for the survey, or will they be going up on the roof?
I believe they say they will use a drone to undertake inspections. The inspection will be visual and will be made from the ground level and from suitably secure protected ladders and safely accessible roofs, galleries or stagings. Part of the structure which are not accessible, enclosed or covered will not be open for inspection. Services such as electric drains and gas heating are inspected and commented on, but they're not permitted to test these installations beyond confirming their operation at the time of the inspection. They'd also spend time reviewing any maintenance records that we have on site should these be available on the day. They go on to say that we anticipate that access to the roof will be available to undertake the inspection. Should this not be the case, we would have to investigate the use of a drone or hire a cherry picker to complete the inspection of the roof. We've got access to the roof through the hatch and the open doorway, so
that's good.
so that's no problem.
So
But they do have alternative methods if there was a
So I'm
issue.
thinking, well, having just finished putting a new roof on a 100-year-old house, which wasn't picked up on our also intending to undertake work to the roof through the installation of the solar panels, which will add some loading to the roof structure. So I'm just wondering whether that load is shared, if you like, between the building condition survey and any survey that we might get with regard to installing PV. Whether that's going to be, whether we need to have a roof survey, specific roof survey, or to ask them for, to upgrade the survey if necessary, to make sure the roof is going to be strong enough. Because a lot of older roofs don't have the space that modern building regs would insist is built in. So there is a bit of a question mark in my mind about what might happen in that situation.
Well, we certainly had the survey from the solar provider, and so we would make that available to whichever company we're appointed, and just say I wish to have panels installed, which they are suggesting is possible, and obviously we would like them to pay a bit more attention to what is there currently, and whether or not it's fine as it is, or if they can recommend any other works that might improve the structural integrity of the roof.
Yes.
So
be
that's
spot strengthening, it might be
yes.
something else. It may be fine, but it may be built like the proverbial
It's a good point to make that a part of this survey, even if it costs us a little bit more. We might as well have a definitive answer.
Yeah, because they would have only checked the weight of the panels, wouldn't they? Probably not necessarily everything.
And just the working on the roof,
Yeah.
just people on the roof and so forth is all extra loading, isn't it?
The other thing is, do you know when they did the survey for the panels, did they look as if there's any like woodburn and things like that, or have we got a woodburn spray certificate in the last 10 years, do you know?
Not that I
Off the
know.
top of my head, I don't know.
Never heard of
I need to look at the solar PV survey again.
Right. I tell you what, in that case, then, on that quote we get, we do need to ask them, because often it's a separate person that has to look at that. Could they check for woodburn in the loft?
For any kind of infestation.
Any type of infestation in the loft, because they can nibble away and literally get collapsed without even knowing it if you don't not keep
Well,
an
there's
eye on
dry
it.
rot as well.
I hope not with dry rot.
No, but if we're having a survey
yeah, I know.
done,
It would. You might have to get a special surveyor for dry rot, wet rot, and woodburn.
but we can ask if they do it.
Yeah, they might do, or they might subcontract. We could do that.
Well, I mean, again, I would imagine a lot of these things would be picked up in their condition
I would
survey,
think
and then the
so.
appropriate
Mm.
additional surveys that may be required would be highlighted to us
Yeah.
as part of the remedial actions required.
The one about the strength of the roof relating to the photovoltaic panels, though, is worth doing, isn't it? It's worth asking.
Well, certainly, I think it's a reasonable amount that we're being asked.
Yeah, that's a reasonable
This
description.
survey chair, I'd be happy to.
I'm happy to second that one.
Yeah.
But I would like to have that proviso that we ask about the extra loading.
Yeah, and woodworm and infestation, as you say, make sure that they, if it's not included in that 1,450, perhaps we can ask how much extra it would be. If it isn't, it might well be included, as you said. But if it isn't, I think it's something that's, as we're not sure when it was done, we've obviously, I don't know, and you don't know either.
I've never heard of one.
Yeah, well, an old building will have woodworm, full stop. It's just a question of how much it's got and whether it needs treating, because who knows, it might actually need completely respraying. That's a few thousand on its own.
So do you want to include that as part of your proposal?
Well, I think we take it one step at a time, and we've got a very good quote, so let's go. Perhaps we should take a decision on whether we first of all go for the building condition survey and see where that takes us.
But unless we ask for specific things, we won't know, will we? Because
Well,
if they're not looking
I
for
think
it, they won't
Andrew's
find
made the
it.
point already that
Yeah.
they'll be qualified in looking out for the telltale signs for certain problems, and will make further recommendations.
Well, you're assuming, which we can't do, obviously, legally if you went wrong. So I think we could pass it as hinted seems to want to do. And that's something that when you're talking to the guys or girls, you can just ask them sort of casual if they say, oh no, not that price, we just ask how much extra it would be for that.
Yeah, I was going to say, doesn't it actually come down to what Gary just said, that we approve the appointment of this person, But in addition, we ask a further question as to whether it covers those aspects. And then if they say no, we say, well, what would it cost to do it?
Did you-
As a council body, we have the long-term interest of this building at
Yeah.
heart.
So let's get this right. Who's proposing that? Have you proposed that then?
So yes, I'd like to propose
Can you
that we
say
accept this quotation to
Yeah.
move ahead with the building condition survey.
Which I seconded,
Yeah.
but I'd like to make a second proposal.
We want to do add an amendment, don't we? Which is
Well, I was going to make it,
Or
rather than
do it as
mess
an amendment,
Gary up, I
an
was just going to
additional-
make a
Well,
separate
I'm happy
proposal.
to. I'd listen to an amendment to the proposal if needs be.
That we also draw particular attention to the ability of the roof to sustain the proposed voltaic panels and the condition of the timbers in the roof regarding
infestations.
any infestation.
Yeah.
Then they can come back and they can say, well, yes, we'll do that, or we automatically.
Yeah, it just covers every area,
Yeah.
doesn't it?
Woodworm, dry rot, etc.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it should
And then
cover
they can
it.
say, no, but it'll cost you an extra £1,000.
Yeah,
and
at
that's
least
it.
we know, won't we? So if we're all happy with that, you're happy with those voting of that, yeah? I think it makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Everyone in favour of that one, go ahead. And that's fantastic. So we go back to the my list. Where's it gone?
I hate these things, every time you break down,
Their nose off, don't they? So, Manor House Conservatory, now this should be interesting. So, I guess the question is, our officer come this morning, did you get anywhere with it?
She did.
Right.
Thank you, Chairman. She did attend. It was an informal meeting between myself and the conservation officer. She did apologise for the length of time it's taken for a response to come back. They are extremely short-staffed and very busy in the planning department across all areas, I
I
think.
get my heart.
So, she wanted to apologise, so I'm just passing that on. We walked to
Naomi,
I walked to the back and explained the issue we have and the potential solutions that are, well, theoretically available to us, subject to listed building consent. And I asked whether, in her eyes, informally, there's the possibility of a modern lean-to energy efficient conservatory with a solid roof, roof lights, better insulation, wider footprint. And I said, obviously, you'll only go on what is submitted, but what we're keen to avoid is not wasting time on something that is a complete red herring. And her response was, the chances are nil to nothing on that. It would need to be a timber replacement. She said that you can get photovoltaic glass, which
Which
do
is
have a
what-
shading. And I said, well, would that be permissible? She said, obviously I would need to see it, a sample, or perhaps an example somewhere where it's in situ that I could go and have a look. But it would certainly be considered. But I did mention the fact that obviously the council chamber isn't an original building to when the extent of the manor was built, and she said that doesn't matter. Because obviously originally there was a
Still
long
over 100.
lean-to wooden glass conservatory along the side of the building, and she said it doesn't matter.
Before that, there was a Georgian style one.
Yeah. So that was the message, Chairman.
Right, that's it. Well, I must say that is extremely disappointing, but not surprising. I did sort of say, I know with her, if it's black and white, I don't necessarily think, when she says that, it's final, because it is her interpretation, and another officer, or an appeal, as I think one of our councillors, Martin Ridley, said, might change the minds, because we would still be able to do that if we, particularly, and then possibly might have to ask the full council, were wanting to do that. It depends on how strongly we feel about our design compared with just a repeat. Which isn't about the wood, well, we were doing it in wood, weren't we? So I'm not quite sure why she says that. The only difference is not wood, is the roof struts. because, well, it would be wood, because they wood is held up by wooden joists anyway, so I'm not quite sure why she would say that, because everything else is going to be in the same design and the same keeping as the front, which is a lean-to type, with slates, etc. But, you know, that's a conservation officer's thought. I don't want to change one tiny dipping, which to me with climate change is bonkers, but there you go. You can call it if you want, bonkers. Yes,
I go along with her within reason, because I mentioned way back, we go way back with this group, really. And there was also talk about one day the possibility of using this as a room as well, and being able to join up the more immediate part that's in such a state now. I live in a very old house, a lot older than this one, and I know all the hoops you have to jump to, and I do know that you can compromise. And I know that I and others are brought up in the past. There are different glasses you can use, there are different, all sorts of different insulations and heatings and whatever that can be used. I would just point out that there were a handful of houses like this built at this time in the town when it became popular, but time of the Napoleonic Wars and so forth, that all ties in when people couldn't go abroad, and there are very few left. Stonelands is one, and that's been burned down and had to be rebuilt, which was built as a dower house for the Horth family. There was one out at Pidgley, that's long since gone. This is a very important building in its own right. And yes, we do have to take what we can, steps, generally, to do with climate change and all the rest. But I think it's important, as far as we are able, to keep the character of this. And if anything, to use that character and literally, if you pardon the pun, build on it. It will become even more important in years to come. I think more thought needs to go into it altogether. I can see where Martin comes from, because your heart is definitely in this climate change and all the rest of it. But we've got a situation here where we don't have to butt heads. We can do a bit of everything. I think the important thing at the moment is to agree on what happens with the mess that we've got out here, with rain's coming in and all kinds of things. It's only going to deteriorate further. And we had at one time, as I recall, come up with a rough idea of how it could be slightly enlarged so that it would eventually meet up, if this ever came into being, if I win the lottery.
Is that a pledge? Is that a pledge?
I'll tell you what, if I was to win the lottery, there'll be little flags going all the way over town saying, mine, 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 mine. And then I'll come back and say, now what do you want to do with it? I'm not joking. I try to do my own little bits as it is in that way. But the thing is, it needs thought. I think if we get this building survey for a start, that will help. If we get this energy assessment as well, maybe we can build on that as well, to include in anything like the repair and redesign, if you like, of this. I call it the conservatory porch, because I don't know what else you can call it. It is an important part of the building, because it's the only connection. It's the only connection, isn't it? Yeah. Between some of the rooms. If that was to be left so that it got into a dreadful state and became unusable, it would affect this building quite badly. And we've got a winter coming up now, we're not going to get anything done.
You're right, and we didn't really want to be in this place, did we, from last winter? Because remember when you were speaking to me,
it's been
very
going on
worried
for
about
ages.
it, and it's still going on. It's a question whether or not we need to make any sort of recommendation. There's only 3 of us here, which I was a bit concerned about doing that, because I know 1 or 2 of them.
It's illegal.
True, but 1 or 2 of them taking into consideration did have strong views on it. Yes, I know they need to be here, it's true. See, let's put it like this, it's hard to say this properly. I I completely take your point, because I like things keeping as they were, but I also see,
Precisely.
yeah, but I also see some things in it that are not reasonable now, not you personally, but the laws on listed buildings. If it's an emergency, Rosie always likes saying at our meetings, it's an emergency, why are you talking like that, you know? And that, in a way, that's, yes, you know, it's toned down and we get it right, but the point is, in listed buildings, they aren't sensible laws anyway, I'm afraid to say. They're only listed what the time it was, so if whenever the listed thing started,
They're about 1948.
yeah, 1947, 1948, wherever was there, it's like frozen in the freezer. It's thrown in the freezer, you cannot move on and you cannot go back to what it was. It's a crazy
We have
understanding.
moved on here. We've got a lift. We've got the boiler rooms, definitely since
Well,
1948.
Well, that's true, we have done inside bits, but I'm possibly thinking of the outside bits.
So-
So,
Can I just ask, is the building grade 2 or grade 2 star?
Grade
Grade 2, so the internal alterations are okay to a grade 2.
As long as you don't remove mould.
Grade 2 star, then yes, you've got to be much more careful about the interior, so that's why some of the changes
well, we don't affect the outside,
Yeah,
it's
so
very
it's
too
structural.
have been made. Well, in terms of
We're not starring
the
ourselves.
question with regard to the outside, I think they only reflecting national planning
Yeah,
policy.
she is, yeah.
And I certainly wouldn't want to be wanting to test that as a member of this council, irrespective of the fact that my position at Cambridge. If this was a planning application that came before Dawlish Town Council's planning committee, I think you might be in the minority, Chair, I'm afraid. And
Well, we don't know that,
certainly
it's just an opinion.
Certainly from my point of view, if it helps now move this forward, I'd be very much inclined to agree with the planning officer from Cambridge and with our mayor on this subject.
I'm listening to everything, obviously, and seeing what we can do. There's a few things what she said, of course, we're not quite sure if it's a particular thing she's objecting to. She says more or less on everything there, but did that include moving the boundary, or was she just
a wider footprint.
she didn't separate that off by saying you could go a little bit more, but I don't. It's got to be a conservative, for example.
Obviously it was an informal
Yeah,
discussion. She said your test would be to submit a listed building consent application and everything that entails for it to be formally assessed against whatever criteria they use to grant applications. My concern is that we do all the work for that, which could be considerable, for it not to happen, and then it's been a waste of this council's quite precious time at the moment.
Yeah.
Obviously we've got two detailed quotations and designs for the replacement of a like-for-like conservatory now with energy efficiency improvements such as the solar glass, the self-cleaning glass, hardwood, removal of the asbestos,
Cavity into the walls at the bottom.
a cavity insulation at the bottom. So
That wasn't included, though, was it? That?
in the first two, it
Oh, you
was.
changed it.
No, I haven't changed it. That was in the first quote. They were
Oh,
going to just bring it out slightly and improve the insulation
Oh, okay.
behind it.
Right.
Obviously, those two are still on the table, but in light of what Councillor Moore has said and previously, that we are about to have this energy audit, it might be that they may be able to refine a similar design further that actually helps maintain the image but improves the efficiency for what we're trying to achieve in terms of our climate declaration. But obviously, it's a matter for the committee.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jane. I'd like to propose that we accept the recommendations of the Conservation Officer with regard to the possibility of a modern lean-to replacement, that we return to the original designs, hold them in abeyance until we have the results of the energy conservation, the energy efficiency officer, or what would you call it, professional report, and the surveyor's report as well.
The energy conservation one probably is the most important one, isn't it? The other one will help.
Yes, but there may be things to do with the surveyors as well, that because we've got windows overlapping and all the rest of it. If we're going to get these two reports in now, we've got to forget this. It's not worth following that one. But I'm not saying that everything has gone before is perfect either. What I'm saying is we're looking now for 2 lots of professional advice. Let's get them together. Meanwhile, we can revisit these other things, see if there's anything else that we need to think of in advance, and then work on that together with these reports.
I'd take that.
Yeah. Before we go to vote on that, just ask, and I believe they updated it on the day. They were going to excavate a little bit of the floor and then take it up and relay it. Is that correct in that quote?
In there, I wouldn't touch it. It's got
There would be the
cryolite
safe
asbestos
It's going to come up,
There'd
isn't
be
it?
the safe removal of the
That's what I
asbestos.
mean.
yeah,
So that's going to come up.
cryolite.
So that probably won't have any insulation in that floor. So maybe that's something else.
That's
we
something
need
else we could
to-
discuss.
Yeah,
if
there
we
needs to be
return
some
to it.
sort of insulation put into that.
Mm.
We do. I think that's either in the quote or to do with the floor coverings.
Well, it's something to take further and then
Yeah.
relate to these
Well, they might not
reports.
realise we're going to replace all that, so I think it'll be good that they is noting it, so that would
We
be,
found what it was when we did the Friends of the Manor report,
yeah.
and that was a long time ago.
So,
So
if you're happy with that,
I
let's,
suppose, yeah.
let's go to a vote on that then. But then,
You seconded it, didn't you?
yeah, okay, I'm going to abstain on it, okay, because it is majority, so I sort of keep my powder dry a bit.
Okay, thank you.
I don't want to go back on stuff if I change my mind. So I like to stick to what I believe is right. And I'll be convinced that the next meeting they will be after that.
The thing is, we can't go against a professional officer who, for Timber District Council, is
Well, I know
specialised.
some things about things which I can't tell you at all, so I don't agree with that. There we go. Just to trust me.
Right, Manor House and Riverside Centre car parking. Oh, yeah.
So, yes, we've done the Manor House Conservatory. Is there any sort of update because we've done most of it, or is there somebody who found out about the wall and things, the next door neighbours?
No, this is just about car parking, Chairman.
Just about the car parking itself? Right, okay then.
Well, it's just to note that it is now being, the gates are now being locked, now that South West Water have vacated, and we started to get back into the old territory of chains being hacksawed through
Goodness.
by people that had been locked in overnight despite having notices on their cars.
Oh dear.
Couple of 45 minutes between 6 and 6:45 a.m. one day last week, and that was the result. So we do now have 2 heavy-duty chains placed around the gate, and the building is, or the gates are locked as and when the building is not in use.
And
two,
the meetings, in other words, yeah.
yeah, 2 people were locked in last night because they went to the pub for a drink after a meeting here, but they did get locked in. I'm afraid.
Right.
Oh,
Question, I mean, are they on CCT? Do we know who they are?
Out the front, yes, you would be.
Yeah. I mean, if we know who they are, should we write to them, or
Well, we don't.
what's...
It's residents,
Well, residents or not, they're breaking our rules in a
Well,
way, aren't they?
but we wouldn't
And they're
know.
doing criminal damage.
They are. We have logged that, but we wouldn't obviously know who they are because we don't have access to DVLA databases.
No, but
That would be for the appropriate agencies to take
Yeah,
forward.
if we reported to the police, there's a sort of break-in, as it really is.
Breakout.
Or break-out in this case. Well, they do send police out for breakouts in prisons, but yeah, it's got to be. But I mean, just sort of ticking the bits and pieces off that if it's a repeat person, the only way it's going to stop is somebody turns up that door and says, look, you know, this is a final warning if you do this again, because we've either got to keep on replacing it or ignore it. So I don't know what the committee would think, ignore or follow it up eventually. It could come up again.
Perpetrators do get a notice on the windscreen from us advising that the Manor House car park is a private car park for users of the buildings only, that the gates will be locked when the buildings are not in use, and that the area is covered by CCTV. Trying to be polite.
Yeah.
You know, we do take sympathy that parking is a bit of a premium, especially when you've got service utilities excavating copious amounts of roads. There is also the ability to pay £60 a year for certain English car parks, of which Barton is included, that enables you to park your car between 5 and 6 of an evening and between 8 and 10 in the to enable you to get your car a bit later. So there is that option available for some
In any
residents.
case, it's free from 6 till 9.
And it's free as well.
But that's a very good, that's a very reasonable amount to pay for, the knowledge that you can leave your car there. You know, you could, when you get home from work, and you can have a bit of light breakfast, and you can still be away before the clock starts ticking.
Yeah, and possibly after rush hour as well.
Do we put that on the little label we put on the car, give them that information?
We haven't done, but now we're all aware of it. We're getting brought to our attention the other day, so we might put a link to the information on the
I think it's handy to be able to do that.
That would be a good idea, I agree with that one. Shall we agree with that one? We asked the clerk
I
to
agree
do
that we
that.
could do that, because that would be helpful.
Highlighted this item, sir.
Yeah, so,
And just one other thing, Sharon, related to this.
can you do that
South
or
West-
not?
No, that's fine. I can
Fine.
back that. That's no problem. The South West Water as a what word is generosity to us, did lay ducting for us up to the gate,
Oh, yeah.
so that in future we can install a light that will point down at the gates of whatever design to illuminate the gates better. That was the whole purpose of the floodlight, which without it we would have struggled. But now that we do have that ducting in, that will be a future project that comes before this committee to be installed.
That should be good.
And without going into details, because it's not the remit of this committee, we now, I believe, have a quote to do with CCTV,
Yep.
which will be a much improved system, which will include, just round here, I want to say about the rest, will include another light on the back car park.
CCTV on.
Sorry, CCTV. One on the corner, which will also show part of the entry into Brook Street and down towards Riverside, but we can't see it because of the trees.
Yep.
One actually on the Riverside, with permission from the electricity board, and new one on the front here, and they will all be of infrared, and we can turn them around 360 degrees if necessary, and they will be of evidence quality. And the zoom which is there will remain there, which is exactly on the gate. So there will be other
When is
improvements as
that
well.
going to be done, do you think?
Well, they'll have to call the committee together, go through the quote, and then hopefully go for something.
Yeah, I would anticipate the new year.
The sooner the better, because there are other improvements. It's not a case of marching CCTV cameras all around the town, it's quite the opposite. It's upgrading and being more sensible. But that should help us. But the trouble is that, and you will know all this, Gabby, as well, this problem with this car park goes back years now, and it has caused an awful lot of angst, actually almost bodily harm in some cases, because it's a difficult situation. Although it's our car park, people say, well, you know, the town owns this, we can all park here, sort of thing. And so we can't really put wheel clamps on people. If we said, well, you can have to pay to park, then everyone will park here, which means we lose our hirers. So it needs a lot more thought, and it needs to come back as a particular item with information to this committee, I suggest.
And Major, it's something that needs to be handled sensitively, and I'm sure that Park is taking exactly the right approach at the moment. Softly, you know, I think if we make a big fuss, if we start to, you know, put clamps on cars.
No, we can't, we know we can't. What I'm
saying.
getting at is, this could escalate, and it ought to be something we discuss in advance, if you like, so we know if we've got any options.
But certainly, I think to advise people who may think it's okay to go, you know, to have a sort of extended room hire, if you like. Here we park there, then we go down the pub afterwards. It'll be fine. That's not something that you know, unfortunately we can allow because of the other uses of the car park. So knowing as we do about this car park amount that you can pay £60 a year. Is there other plans to relay that to full council the next
We'll
meeting?
certainly bring it up in the next March report.
So
That's a good
I would
idea,
like
yeah.
to recommend that we do and you wouldn't mind also to report to any issues that we've had and may have in the interim. I hope we don't have any in the interim. I think we've been in a period where the car park's been out of our hands really for a long while. There's been different rules as and when. We're now getting back to normal. We need to restore normal service and the normal security.
But we've had persistent offenders for a long, long time.
Well,
We've got people who live out
I wouldn't
here.
like to suggest that any of what is happening now has anything to do with what might have happened before.
Stuart Kent is one for stuff.
And from the point of view that what we do want to do is just to let people know that it's our car park and it's our right to make it as secure as we feel we need to.
Can I ask, Mr. Chairman, that subject to what happens between now and the next meeting of this, that we leave it between you and the clerk to bring this up as an agenda item if it escalates and we need to discuss it further. I don't want us to lapse from this meeting to the next and then January and
Well, Chairman, I suggest it only comes back should the situation require it to. I mean, yesterday I was the only car in the car park when I left, and that compared to the week before was a marked improvement. So if things are getting back to normal now that the gates can't be stormed open, then obviously the message is getting through. But we can also make people aware of other alternatives that they might have nearby. It's not going to suit everybody, particularly if you live at the top of the hill, but it does exist, and some people may take that offer up. So, yeah, fingers crossed.
if anything goes wrong, it'd be nice to know that it comes up as an item,
Yes.
not only as your report, that's all. Because it has been a big problem, and if this back one later on is going to be completely full, we only need 2 or 3 to be parking up here to completely mess the thing up.
Yeah. I think obviously with car parks, we forget, don't we, that they're, in this sort of area, they're a massive asset sort of here for hiring and stuff. And on the other side, as Gary was saying, on the other side, the residents see an empty space overnight and they can't find a space outside their house. It is a total frustration, but if we don't have a line by saying, in a very pleasant way, which I know our staff are very, very diplomatic, to say that it is private property, basically, and we do have a right to shut it for security reasons, then, we will lose that ground, and in the end it will become a free-for-all, which wouldn't suit even them, because they won't get parking space either.
We've been very close to it, and when the Manor House was about to be sold some years ago, we had a lot of problems to do with it, because that's exactly what people were saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it isn't there to
And we
understand
had to
that.
clamp down on it so that we could let the building out to make the money, to make it viable to keep
Yeah.
the building. And a lot of it hinges on.
It's a big asset, absolutely. Yeah, so it's important that we do keep a reasonable line of sensibility here and not have a free-for-all, because we don't know what else they would do either. If people are wandering around, then you don't know, when the CTC's going, you don't know who's looking at the lead on the roof to take it next time or whatever.
Oh, they did try that, did you?
Yeah, well, I know that's why I said it. It's got to be kept secure. It's in the hands of custodials for what, like it or not, that's the council at the moment, isn't it, legally? And we have a legal responsibility to keep everything safe. I like to think upon this, I know it sounds a bit over the top, but if this was my house and I lived here, I want to do everything properly. If you come to my house, you'll find everything is done properly. People who serve in my house after and recently for valuation, my goodness, you wouldn't even want to move here, would you? Because I do it properly. No, it isn't my building, so I have to say to myself sometimes, well, if that's what the authority want, let them get on with it. I don't live here, but I still think in terms, if I lived here, what would I do? So if you understand me in those ways, then it might help you.
The point is that we are a corporate body, and as such we are responsible for it on behalf.
Exactly. I've really put my little 2 pence in, and that's it. So we've all finished. We haven't got a date for the next meeting. Is it 2 months? Is it going to be January? Yeah.